Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. Hopefully, you're looking for the electric terminal tractor and eTRU webinar. My name is Jessie Lund. I am our lead program director for transportation here at the National Association of State Energy Officials, or NASEO for short. Welcome to today's webinar. This is part of a series that, if we can go to the next slide, NASEO has been hosting for a year and a half or so now, supporting state energy offices with on-road freight electrification, planning, programs, policy. And through this virtual discussion series, we're hoping to help bring to light some of the current challenges around this transition, as well as understand the impacts and needs of fleets in particular, but also charging providers, help states understand how they can best leverage public dollars as well as private sector investments to support this transition, and continue to build coalitions along key corridors across the country. On the next slide, you will see that this work is informed not just by NASEO staff here on the team, but by this broader advisory group. This is made up of state energy offices, other state agencies, as well as other public agencies and private sector experts as well. So we're very lucky to have the guidance of this group coming together to inform the work that we are doing with our members as well as these webinars. So thank you to everyone listed here. On the next slide, I'll just quickly go over some housekeeping items. As you may have seen, today's webinar is being recorded. This will be shared following the webinar on NASEO's YouTube account, as well as on our freight electrification page. I'm happy to send out a link to all the registrants afterward. Feel free to share it with anyone who wasn't able to join us live today. If you look at the bottom of your Zoom box, you will see that there is a Q&A option. Please feel free to put any questions into that box. I will be tracking them throughout the webinar, and we will have time for Q&A and discussion after the presentations today. So please type your questions in as they come. We will get to them near the end of the webinar and don't want anyone to forget. And then just as a reminder, all of the webinars part of this series are recorded and are available online. You can see the URL there. And again, I'll send it out to all the registrants afterward. Otherwise, we can get into today's topic. I'm very excited for this one. On the next slide, we'll see that today we're talking about electric terminal tractors and electric transport refrigeration units, or eTRUs. These are two segments of the freight sector that we're very excited about, that we think are really prime for electrification today. And not just something NASEO thinks, but that a lot of industry research and analysis has supported as well. And so today we're very lucky to be joined by four subject matter experts who are going to share with us a bit about this technology, what models are available in the electric space, what is working, what's challenging for fleet customers in this space, as well as what states are doing and could potentially do to support this segment. So without further ado, we're going to start with the terminal tractor side. I'm going to turn it over to Mark Purcell from Orange EV, who is going to share with us a bit about their work on electric terminal tractors. Mark, take it away.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jessie. Hello, everyone. Happy to be here. Mark Purcell. I'm on our corporate development team here at Orange EV. I've been with the company almost 3 years now. Spent the last 15 years in OEM manufacturing, and very excited to talk about Orange EV and just EV as a whole. So Delaney, you can go to the next slide. So for those of you that don't know what a yard truck is, there's a number of names: hostlers, yard dogs, yard goats, mules. Basically, it's a 100% electric vehicle that we design, manufacture, and sell out of our Kansas City office here in the Midwest. And we have four different models. The eTRUs, so you'll notice all of our vehicles are named after dogs. We have a warehouse truck, which is our legacy product called the eTRU. And we've sold about 1,800 of those now in the US and Canada. And then 2 years ago, we launched our new product called the Husky. And we have three different versions of those. And it is a bigger, faster, more powerful vehicle meant for port and rail applications mostly. I won't get into the details too much, but yard trucks, it's just like the name. They're meant to stay in the yard. We do have a tandem version that you can take on the road. if you need to, but most of the applications that customers use these for, it's what's called yard grooming, and it's pushing containers around the yard at 30 miles an hour or less, runs of typically a mile or less. And as far as EVs go, it is probably the low-hanging fruit of the easiest vehicle to make electric and make it make sense. Next slide, please. So when I say make it make sense, one of the biggest challenges for electrifying with customers that have been using a diesel for 20, 30 years is the initial cost of ownership. As you can see there, our price tag is about double in most cases. It depends on which model you have, but it's typically about double the sticker price of a diesel. And for a lot of customers, well, how do I get over that? It's very simple, actually. And one of the things that we do very, very well as a company, it's a big cost for us, but it's worth it, is we allow our customers to try the vehicles before they buy them. And if you don't like it, fine. You didn't invest anything, but we'll let you try it for a week, a month, 2 months, sometimes depending on the customer, to make sure it's going to work in your operation. And I can tell you with absolute confidence, selfishly, once you start driving it, it pretty much sells itself. So we do have a lot of success with that demonstration program. The TCO model is probably one of the biggest things that helps not only us, but our customers. And when you look at the total cost of ownership, you have to look beyond the initial price tag. And it's how much money are you spending to keep that vehicle working and moving containers for you in your yard. And this model's built over 10 years. I would say more times than not, you've made your money back by year 2, and that's just in fuel and maintenance alone. Our diesel competition, when you look at how much fuel you're spending per year, how much downtime you have per year, by year 3 or 4, typically you're swapping the motor, you're changing the transmission, your truck is not running like it did at year 1. Whereas EVs, there's no decline. They stay nice and steady. Our uptime at Orange EV is about 98% uptime. And we'll get into that a little bit later. But when you look at diesels, often the goal when we talk to other customers, and customers, by the way, are who helped us build our TCO. A lot of times we get challenged on, well, where did you get the numbers? How do you know how much fuel I buy per year? Well, they came directly from our customers, and that's how we built that out. Uptime on diesel units, if you're lucky, you'll get about 80% uptime, meaning 20% of the time your vehicle is not usable, and you're losing money. So we do count that in. And we've had a massive growth in the last 2 years in particular with our lease and rental program. So if you don't have the CapEx up front to buy a vehicle, you can rent or lease it from us, and that's a good model for a lot of customers. Next slide, please. So when we talk about uptime and fleet performance, you can see year 1, which was 2015, we were down in the 88, 89% range. And you'll see in that gray box below, that's where the diesels live. And, in the last few years, you can see we're up in the 97, 98 range of uptime. So we're very, very proud of our product. We stand behind our product. As a company, our goal is to lower emissions and, ultimately save the planet, or at least do our part to make improvements. And diesel yard trucks are one of the biggest contributors of pollution in the air. So we're very proud that, when we get to replace a diesel, it's helping our environment, but it's also helping our customers. Next slide, please. So I would say the number one challenge would be the infrastructure piece. And my role here at Orange EV is I oversee the charging partnerships, landscape, market analysis, equipment. And, at the end of the day, we do have some chargers that we do make in-house. We also partner with a number of folks, and we buy, sell, and service. Service is a big piece of what makes our business model work. And from the customer level, if something is down, something's not working properly, when you go through Orange EV, you make one phone call. When we show up to a yard that already has charging infrastructure in the ground, it does present some challenges, because we're the first phone call anyway. But the bottom line is charging infrastructure 10 years ago was pretty simple. It didn't require a whole lot of juice. Now fleets are getting bigger. Historically speaking, with warehouses, they'll buy one or two trucks, and it was pretty easy to plug in an inexpensive charger, and you're off to the races. Now that fleets are growing of over 100, and it's not just our vehicles in the yard, it's forklifts, it's personal vehicles, it's cranes, it's all kinds of equipment. Class 6 vans and trucks that are ripping around also need to charge. So we have gone to a model of variety. If you want a proprietary charger, okay, no problem. If you want a CCS1 charger, okay, no problem. We've got options for you. Our vehicles will work. At the end of the day, we do not want charging to be a barrier for you to be able to electrify your yard, and oftentimes that is the case. So, like I said, we've got a number of different options. We also purchased a charger company recently. It's called OptiGrid, and keeping with the orange theme, it's called the Orange Juicer. And so this particular piece of equipment will allow us to hook up to very, very small amounts of power. It has a battery backup, so you can trickle charge from the grid, keeping your power bill very low, and then you can fast charge the vehicles from the batteries. So that's a nice addition to our lineup. Next slide, please. We've also partnered with folks like Kempower. They make one of the best DC fast chargers, in the game. We can service those as well. So again, Orange EV stands behind not only our products, but our partners' products, and gives you really a turnkey solution to electrify. And there's a variety of options based on what your needs are. Going back to the demonstration model that we use, one of the biggest pieces of information we can pull from the data once you try the vehicle for a month is, a lot of times we show up, we have a customer, conversation with our customers, and they say, well, Mark, I need a 400 kilowatt charger. Why do you need something that big? And then we do the demo, and then we can go back and say, hey, customer, you don't need something that big. You can get away with this little movable charger. It's very inexpensive. It's easy to hook up. It's more than enough juice to run your needs. So that's another reason we do it, is so we're not overselling our customers equipment that they don't need. The other advantage is we've found partners that the chargers are tunable. We can remotely monitor them 24/7. We can see problems before the customer does, and 9 times out of 10, I can fix the problem from my computer before the customer even knows anything's wrong. We can hook them up to 480, 208, 240. I can hook them up to refrigerator plugs. That's another advantage, is if we show up to a yard, and we sold a bunch of these to a port recently, and it's going to be 3 years before they have the infrastructure in place where we can hook up some larger chargers. And they're realizing the TCO model is so robust that they went ahead and bought a number of trucks earlier than they were anticipating. So that way they can get rid of their diesels and run a number of trucks before their big order comes next year, and start seeing the benefits immediately. But most of these places have, and I know Matt's going to touch on this later, what's called a reefer plug, where refrigerator containers for food storage, et cetera, they need to plug in at the dock or the yard. And there's a number of these, and we found a way where we can hook those up for our customers very quickly, very, very easily, and very inexpensively. And then the last photo on the right there is, in an effort to have more variety, we run into things like union labor or autonomous vehicles, things of that nature, where the driver is not allowed to plug in the truck, or it's inefficient to have them do so. So having what we call a humanless opportunity is going to be very important in the future. We've tried some inductive options with pads in the ground, but for our yard trucks, this seems to be the best option. And we've partnered with a company called Roxas. Wonderful company, great people. We've completed our first major deployment with them, which is a big deal. And ultimately, it's a robotic arm that plugs in the vehicle for you. You just pull up next to it, and it'll do it for you. So lots of interesting, cool things in the marketplace, and we continue to learn and grow as a company. And as we scale, again, partnerships are so important. And being able to again alleviate barriers of entry is the name of the game. Next slide. And just the proof in the pudding here. Since 2021, the first 7-8 years of our company's existence with new terminal truck or yard truck sales, we were hovering around 1% typically. The majority going to diesel, obviously. You can see the rapid growth that we've had as a company. It's very, very exciting. We are looking at being close to 28% of all new purchases this year. So pretty big curve there. We're growing like crazy. We're hiring like crazy. Life is good. People are really starting to understand, and we've got a lot of momentum right now with customers realizing the advantages of going electric with their yard vehicles. And not only that, with electric terminal trucks, we're 9 out of 10 all new purchases for the last several years. So very, very exciting. It's a good place to be. And I look forward to your questions in the Q&A, but hopefully that helps you with understanding more of the yard truck universe, but the infrastructure piece as well. And I think that's the last. I think I have one more just to show you. 2 years ago, we, as part of a growth, we moved into a new 400,000 square foot facility. We've been doing about 30 trucks a month ish for the last couple of years. We're now over 100 trucks a month we're building. So again, growth is good.
Thank you so much, Mark. Really appreciate that overview of this segment and just all the work that Orange EV is doing here. I think a lot of times in the freight electrification space, our state members are used to hearing kind of single-digit sales numbers for
Yeah,
electrification, and it's quite a
yeah,
different story here on the terminal tractor side to
a
see
little bit
that
different.
28%.
A
Yeah.
little bit different. And at the end of the day, one of the things that I think that our company does really well is we're here for the customers, we're here for the states, we're here for everybody. And if somebody's stuck or having challenges or have questions, we have experts in literally every department you could think of. We've got a grants department, a huge engineering department. We've got a huge service network. At the end of the day, this is good for everybody. So, if we can hop on a phone call and help answer any questions, concerns, that's what we're here for.
Thank you so much. Well, for now, we're going to switch gears a little bit and talk about another segment of freight electrification, the TRU space. And we've got one of, if not the foremost expert on this space here joining us. So without further ado, Matt, I'll turn it over to you. We've got Matt Srnec from Thermo King. Matt, take it
All
away.
right. All right. Thanks, Jessie. So coming to you today out in the wild. So I'm Matt Srnec, Principal Electrification Engineer at Thermo King. Also lead a lot of our applications work and working with customers on electrification. So kind of last minute, but I ended up being out with some customers today. So thanks for having me. Thermo King is the leader in transport refrigeration. We've been around since 1938 when we basically invented it. And we've been really bringing forward new ideas ever since. So wanted to give you guys a little bit of introduction quick to what transport refrigeration is. It's not super visible until you know it's there. And then talk about our different technologies that we're seeing in electrification for hybrid, batteries, and EPTO. And then really hopefully emphasize what we need to do to grow the infrastructure to support some progress. So you can go to the next slide, please. So Thermo King transport refrigeration, our commercial vehicle HVAC, there's products in things that probably touch your life every single day. All the food you eat, restaurants, the ability to dine out and have quick serve restaurants, the produce shipped from overseas, the options to ship things on rail or on the road, and to keep the drivers that are moving the freight comfortable overnight with our APU HVAC products so they don't have to idle the big truck engine, and as well as equipping all of our equipment with digital telematics, connectivity, and of course supporting everything with global service. So over 200 dealer locations here in the U.S., as well as a lot of ongoing training for our service technicians. And we continue to progress with connectivity, automation, and interconnectivity to build an ecosystem. You can go to the next slide. So I'm going to leave you guys with these slides as a collateral. So I'm an engineer, so I put way too much content on the slides. So hopefully there's some engineers that are either on the webinar here, or an engineer you can pass this on to. But a lot of information about transport refrigeration. The legacy product, even starting back in the 60s, had the ability to plug into the grid. So starting as early as 1963. And that is still a major option today. Our customers can run on diesel when they're driving down the road, and then when they get to their warehouse, they can plug into the grid there. And John will talk a little bit more about that equipment. But the ability to plug in and run that equipment, zero emissions, while they're stationary, has been in existence a long time. But the barriers to that for our legacy technology, as well as our newer technologies that are battery and ePTO hybrid, continue to be things like underbuilt infrastructure, a variety of connection types that are existing, so mismatches on connectors, the perceived complexity of electrification, which I think a lot of my other associates can identify with, maintenance, and also transactional gaps. So, if I'm providing electricity, I want to get paid for that, but this isn't my truck. So how do I do that? And that retail connection didn't really exist until recently, when EVSEs and chargers and everybody else figured that out for electric vehicles. So I think John's going to talk a little bit more about that as well. But I'm going to leave this with a question to the stakeholders here. We're really looking for, when will TRU connections and especially off-duty truck trailer parking be added to some of these corridor projects for electrification that are being planned for heavy-duty trucks, and they're missing some of these connections. So you can go to the next slide. So I've put a couple of insights here, both for refrigerated distribution center as well as what a truck parking or charging site would look like. Refrigeration uses energy for high demand cooling, so up to 20 kilowatts at times. And the goal is to say you have in the heat we're having now, take a 120 degree, 53-foot trailer and get that ready to put ice cream in. And the demand on the Thermo King equipment from our customer and the requirement is to get that done in about 90 minutes. So imagine your refrigerator at home going from sitting out in the sun to be able to store ice cream in 90 minutes. That takes a lot of energy, and we make that happen. So looking for that energy, both in that pull down segment and running over that 6 to 24-hour day, it really depends on the driver and load scheduling on what that total kilowatt hours looks like. But we like to say, allocate about 20 kilowatts of connectivity per trailer and up to 100 kilowatt hours of use. And as we transition to charging batteries for battery hybrids and things like that, maybe you need a 100 kilowatt connection to enable that logistics within your yard. And some of that's going to be a little bit different customer to customer. It's really application specific. The logistics cycle between, grocery store warehouse 1 and fast food servicer 2, and the overall, multi-brand food distributor is all going to be different. so a lot of this takes a little bit of consultation to make sure that the right energy is in the right place. Next slide. Corridor charging hubs. I guess my main point is here that the industry has never really embraced putting shore power connections at public locations. There were a few efforts 10, 15 years ago. There was some funding put forward to it, but we really never got a chance to really grow that. And so you come to the truck stop and you're running, pretty much 100% diesel for refrigeration. In the future, if these connections aren't added to these public corridor locations, I guarantee you the refrigeration is all going to be running on diesel without that connectivity. So the goal here really is to look at what charging standards can be used, what things like MCS can be used to power the trucks. And while solutions like shore power are great, and can really get fleets to maybe being, half electric operation, battery hybrids and EPTO power from tractors can really move that forward into nearly 100% full utilization, right, of electric opportunities. We can talk about charger optimization, things like EPTO and being able to provide lower power charging, especially at these sites in combination with megawatt charging, can really help the utilization of MCS chargers overall. This webinar probably isn't the time to get into that detail, but we can provide that consulting. So, Jessie's had me on, on here to talk, and I'm completely open as a resource to discuss, energy budgets and connectivity and process flow for transport refrigeration. You can go to the next slide. Just to quickly step through, I know there's some limited time here. Grid hybrid is shore power, right? I need a 20 kilowatt connection. The most common connection is going to be an IEC pin and sleeve connector. Again, this is going to be available on equipment like John's going to present. You can go to the next slide. Battery hybrid. This is where we basically bring our shore power with us. There's batteries under the trailer up to 140 kilowatts. Most routes can get by with say 70 to 100 kilowatt hours. These batteries can be DC charged. They can be AC charged. Customers probably need to set up a one-to-one EVSE to trailer, especially on trailer where there's going to be bigger batteries, a one-to-one connection, very much similar to shore power today, to be able to maintain the energy on those trailers while they're in the yard so that when they leave on their route, they have 100% state of charge. I can't stress that enough because customers are going to try to get the least amount of batteries they need to do their route operations. Making sure those are charged to 100% before they leave the yard is really important. I kind of envy the yard truck situation with the Orange EV guys. The trucks always stay pretty captive. They always know where they are. It's a little bit easier to manage. On the TRUs, once they leave the yard, anything can happen. So we want to make sure that the batteries are fully charged, and especially in the case of hybrid operation, that diesel is always there as a backup because the food is critical to how we operate the business, how our customers operate their business, and really how the country relies on that cold chain. Go ahead, next slide. EPTO is something new. Thermo King demonstrated with Tesla at the ACT show where we could run our reefer trailer off of the power exported from the semi. So this changes the game a little bit where you can have a really fast charge on the semi, and that can provide power to the refrigeration system. And then either the diesel takes over when the EPTO isn't there, or in the future, there's another battery on that trailer for the holdover. We still need a connection to charge and power the trailer. And then, because the tractor's not always going to be able to be there, right? So something new, always open to talk about these types of technologies as well. You can go to the next slide. There's a little bit of energy estimation here on this next slide. Again, you can look at it. You can look at it and read. We really have this cycle in the yard where the trailer spends surprisingly a lot of time, and then on the route where the main amount of energy is to make up that temperature rise within the cold box when the doors are open and when those deliveries are being made. So again, lots of energy spread over a pretty long period of time. You can go ahead. So some more numbers here that can help the calculations based on the 3 different scenarios. I won't really get into the details today, but there's some good reading material here. You can go ahead and digest that and feel free to ask questions or follow up. Next slide. Got some leaving points here. Really, these power access, and the power access for private sites, public energy connections, the interoperability continue to be some of the highest barriers to fully electrify. We want to try to break down those barriers for customers so that we can just provide the equipment, they can connect it, and they can run their operations without doing much change over what they're doing today. Sorry. And we'd really like to see the folks that are implementing and funding these corridor electrification projects for heavy-duty transport require trailer parking and connections for trailers. Because without those connections and the energy, we're going to end up with a lot of fancy electric trucks pulling a lot of diesel reefers. So again, with no TRU shore power connections or no charging connections, diesel really is the only option. So that's, I'm going to kind of leave that with you today. And thank you very much. And I will be around for questions.
Thank you so much, Matt. I see we have a bunch of great questions starting to come in through the Q&A. So we will get to those after presentations. Stay tuned. Everyone else, just quick reminder, throw those in the Q&A. We will get to them. But for now, we're going to continue the eTRU shore power and charging conversation. I'm going to turn it over to Jonathan Daou from ESL Power Systems.
Hi, thank you so much, Jessie. My name is Jonathan Daou. I'm a product manager with ESL Power Systems, and I work on shore power and charging for TRUs, basically. So next slide, please. A little background about ESL. It's been in the business for over 35 years, and our main business was shore power connections for containers at port terminals and for many years, and we've serviced over 64 countries. But recently, we've seen that shore power, as Matt was talking about, it's been gaining a lot of traction, and we've seen over 6,000 plus units just installed in the US over the past 2 or 3 years. And it's been a huge growth for ESL and for the market itself. So when we look at over 6,000 units, it means that we're talking about a huge amount of power going to these, which adds up to almost an infrastructure numbers over 18, maybe gigawatts of power. Next slide, please. So shore power is basically a connection to the trailer. It's an alternative power to the trailer. For when the trailer is stationary, you can connect it so that you're not using the diesel engine, and that saves a lot of time and money on maintenance, on diesel, and on refueling logistics and all of that. And shore power is basically just power while docking. It uses 480 volts, 3-phase, and almost 20 kilowatts of power. And the standard connection, although there are many proprietary connections, but the standard connection is the IEC 6039 pin and sleeve connector. And today we see that one of the biggest challenges is that there is no communication with the TRU. So it's just a connection that provides power, and there's no real back and forth between the TRU, the grid, or the warehouse itself. It is compatible with almost all of the OEM TRUs. So whatever your customers will be getting from OEMs like TK, like Carrier, like other OEMs, this will be a standard connection that they will provide, given that the trailer is hybrid. And today we've seen that many large fleets are deploying this at huge scale within their facilities, because they are seeing that the ROI is there, that the total cost of ownership does make very much sense to them, and the payback period is actually less than 2 years for this product, given obviously that it is used properly. There are many challenges with using this product. But what we as ESL have seen, and what Matt mentioned several times in his presentation, is that AC charging is the way to go, right? It's the future of TRUs. It is what people are looking for, and it is the better option for TRUs in general. So the reason that I say it's a better option is that with a single infrastructure, now you can provide power to both shore power and to charge your electric trailers. When I say electric trailers, it's electric trailers that have batteries, battery-powered electric trailers. So the reason that that is very important is that the main cost that we have seen for these deployments at facilities is the infrastructure cost. We end up as equipment providers being maybe 10 or 15% of the total cost of the infrastructure or the total cost of the project. That means that 85 or 90% of the cost is going down to maybe engineering, contractors, infrastructure, conduits, panels, grid upgrades, all of that stuff. So the biggest advantage that we can bring to customers is giving them a unit that uses only one infrastructure to provide several means of connections to different vehicles at just one stationary point. And that being said, we use the SAE J3068, which is the outlet on our unit, and we have interchangeable cables that can connect obviously to another SAE J3068 for three-phase charging. It can connect to the IEC connector for shore power for trailers. And in addition, it can do proprietary connections and single-phase connections like the J1772 and the NACs. But the bigger advantage that we've seen is that a lot of these companies do not have a way to track how much power they're using, what uptime they're having, what downtime they're having at chargers, and basically what's going on in the yard. So in addition to just being a charging station, we've implemented some communication that can happen with the trailer and with the facility itself. So with the trailer, right now, our options are PWM, which is pulse width modulation. It's a very basic and simple way of communicating. And then the Lund CP, which is a more advanced way, which gives a lot more details on what the trailer is doing and possibly the location of each trailer. Because as Matt and Mark were talking about, it's very easy to track tractors where they are, but very difficult to track trailers where they are. So with that type of communication, we are potentially able to track each trailer on its position, which charger was plugged into, how much time it was plugged into, and the power drawn, basically, which will help not only us in providing our payback periods and our ROIs to customers, but also provides customers on their progress in electrification. In addition to that, it uses OCPP, which is a very important point, especially when going to corridor charging. That way we can communicate with yard management systems and charging management systems to tell them not only about the power and send all of that information over to the facilities, but there's also a chance for billing purposes to happen. And it allows these charging stations to be in public places and not only behind the fence. This point is a little bit off, not 100%, but connects to yard management software via Wi-Fi. We also have cellular and Ethernet options, so all of those communication methods are available. And this is mainly built for next generation battery trailers and also for existing hybrid trailers. Next slide, please. So this picture shows what the charging station looks like. It is a very, very simple charging station, the exact copy of the shore power station that ESL has today. However, it does not have a cable coming out of it, which will only have a permanent type of connector on it. It has a configurable and interchangeable cable system. So as you see here, I only represented 3 cables, but the options are many as long as it's AC. The charging station powers up to 52 kilowatts in power, so we can use the J3068 to its full potential. Charging a 100 kilowatt battery will take only 2 hours. Charging a 300 kilowatt battery will be overnight. It will take about 6 to 7 hours, depending on if the TRU is running or not. It can also do regular shore power, and the J1772 NACS connections. Next slide, please. So I want to emphasize a little bit that TRU infrastructure is different to EV infrastructure or EV charging infrastructure. It is not single phase, it's three-phase industrial service, it's 480 volts, and it requires different electrical infrastructure than typical, EV yards or programs. The load is between 20 and 52 kilowatts. So if we're talking about single phase or three-phase shore power, then we're near the 20 kilowatt capacity. And if we are talking about three-phase charging using the J3068, then it ramps up to 52 kilowatts, depending on what the TRU is capable of accepting as power. And then the connectors that we are targeting are basically the shore power and the SAE J3068, since these will be mainly in fleet yards or in cold distribution center yards, where if not 100%, then 99% of the vehicles are going to be TRUs, which will be using those connectors. However, the capability is still there for the 1772 and the NACS connectors. And I think a very important thing is that we have noticed a lot of incentives on the J1772 and the NACS connectors and the simple EV, the level 2 EV charging. There are many, many incentives that push these customers or these companies to actually go with these programs and deploy large-scale EV charging. However, as Matt was saying, there's not much effort put into the TRU sector or industry. And I think this is a big, big chance for us to be able to do that. Not only can we monitor how much power, and it can also, help these companies save a lot of time and a lot of power and emissions on their fleets and on their TRUs. And from the environmental and safety requirements, these are the product is completely UL listed. It's completely safe to use. We have nothing that's ever energized for people when they are using, since it's AC power. It's very different than DC. DC can be controlled very easily. AC is a little more tricky to do that. However, our unit can never be harmful to anyone, and we have drive-off protections, weatherproof enclosures, and industrial cabling, which are required. And for us as a company, we see that is not an option. It is a requirement for these standards to be met in these cases. Next slide, please. A little timeline on how we've been seeing stuff progress throughout the years. As Matt was saying, since 1963 or 8, I forgive me if I'm wrong, Matt, but hybrid fleets, hybrid TRUs have been there and have been slowly progressing in quantities and in utilization throughout the fleets. However, today we've seen a big ramp. Since the past 2 or 3 years, we've seen a very big ramp. This year, we've actually hit our record number. We are over 3,000 units for this year alone. And we're starting to see also some of the battery electric trailers come into the market. There are several companies starting to deploy these, and we're seeing some promising results. And in the future, we see a lot of scaling up with electric TRUs, which require a little bit more advanced technology than what is available today. And that's why the new charging station, the eTRU Connect EV Plus, is a must we see for these facilities. Next slide, please. And just a little bit about the incentives. I'm going to go back to what we have, or what I have experienced in my career so far in this industry, is that there are some facilities, some electrical utilities that are providing a lot of these incentives. For example, in California, we have Edison, we have PGE, we have SDG&E that are providing very good incentives. However, these programs are starting to ramp down. They are, I know that some of the programs are coming to an end. And to be honest, we have not seen the full deployment that we would have liked to see. Maybe fleets are not very incentivized to do this. But there are also some programs like the LCFS program, which these units can generate a big amount of revenue, given that they average about 10 to 12 kilowatt hours. So there is a lot of money to be made over there as well. And I think it's a very good approach to go to customers, giving them that not only are they paying back for the unit within 2 years, or less than 2 years, but there are also several other incentives that make this a much more feasible project for them to pursue. Next slide, please. So that is all for me, and thank you very much. If you need anything, please reach out to me, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you guys have.
Thank you so much, John. Super helpful. We're going to keep it going on this incentives topic. I'm going to turn it over to Emily Spath with CALSTART, who's going to speak more from the incentive program administration perspective. Emily, take it away.
Thank you, Jessie. Emily Spath. I am the Deputy Director of Incentive Policy at CALSTART, which is a national and international nonprofit focused on clean transportation. And as Jessie said, one of the things we do is administer incentive programs. And so I'm just going to focus on incentives and as they relate to terminal tractors and eTRUs today. So go ahead, next slide. So one incentive program that has probably some of the most experience with both of these topics is California CORE, which stands for the Clean Off-Road Equipment Voucher Incentive Project. If anyone is familiar with HVIP, which is the Truck and Bus Voucher Incentive Project in California, CORE is the off-road spinoff of that same type of program, same type of idea. It's a dealer-led application process that issues payment after the equipment is delivered. It is a CARB program funded through Clean Climate Investments and administered by CALSTART. Go ahead, next slide. So quick overview into CORE. It was established in 2020. It's actually about to start its 6th round of funding. It's an open and closed program every year. And it's designed to offset the higher cost of commercially ready, zero emissions off-road equipment deployed in California. So a few things in there, right? Have to prove commercially ready. They have to be 0 point source emissions, and 3 years in California for use. One big thing that applies to CORE and leads to a lot of its success as a program is there is no scrappage requirement. You can just place an order and you don't have to get rid of any existing equipment. And then another item is stacking, which is what we call combining CORE with any other public funding is allowed. CORE actually has no restrictions on it, except for that you can't overpay for the base price of the equipment. A few numbers to throw out for CORE. To date, it has received $473 million in funding. And actually, that just went up about 2 weeks ago when CORE was allocated another $68 million that we used to open up this fall. It had over 700 participating companies or purchasers in the program, different entities, and has to date deployed over 2,300 pieces of equipment in California. And deployed means it's actually been delivered and been paid out. So there's still more in the pipeline that are being built and getting ready to be delivered. Go ahead, next slide. So CORE is an off-road, lots of different categories, pieces of equipment. Keep it nice and brief, right? So down in the bottom, you'll see TRUs are still an eligible category. Those in gensets. We'll talk about it in a couple slides, but terminal tractors used to be eligible in CORE and they no longer are. Go ahead, next slide. So first focusing in on eTRUs. So eTRUs have been eligible since CORE started in 2020 and to date has funded $10.4 million towards 186 individual TRUs. We allow new or conversion. So they can purchase a brand new one that's listed, or it can be a conversion of an existing diesel unit converted entirely to zero emissions. That does require an executive order from CARB Aftermarket Parts, but will be funded through the program. Then in 2025, the category was expanded to include gensets, which are the electric powered generators attached to shipping container reefers to power them while they're in ports. And then something that's kind of unique, and we've talked a lot about infrastructure, and I think that'll continue to be a theme. In CORE, we allow infrastructure, and it's typically a 1-to-1 ratio. So for every piece of equipment you receive a voucher for, you can apply for one infrastructure enhancement. Those vary in amount based on the piece of equipment and the power level. There is an exception for TRUs. They can actually have up to 3 infrastructure enhancements per TRU. And those, as you'll see there, if they're electric, it's $3,000 per. And that's because we've recognized that TRUs can have multiple locations where they need to wait and charge and unload while they're at a single address location. And so the goal of that was to allow them to build infrastructure in multiple locations at one address to have the best opportunity for success. The table you'll see on the left is from our latest implementation manual from Core, and this shows you the up to amounts for each TRU. Voucher amounts are determined by CARB on a unique equipment basis, so each piece of equipment has to apply. And then CARB uses various inputs and market needs to determine what that voucher amount will be. Go ahead on to next. So you can talk about terminal tractors, particularly in Core. So terminal tractors graduated from Core per the 24-25 CARB funding plan. And from a voucher incentive program perspective, this is really a success story. Like terminal tractors have been very successful, and then graduating from Core is showing how successful an incentive program can be. And so the initial reason was Core So Core had terminal tractors start at a higher voucher level. That voucher level decreased by $30,000 every year. And after 2 decreases, we continued to see oversubscribed funding. And even before Core, terminal tractors were actually in HFIP. So California has been funding them for many years. As Orange EV talked about, the total cost of ownership benefits are there and can be seen. When they're talking about in 2 years, you're starting to see payback on it. That's something you want to see when you're funding electric versus a diesel. And then in addition to that, in California in particular, there are other scrap and replace programs with funding that fund terminal tractors. Since Core is the least restrictive with no scrappage, the next option would be to look at applying to funding programs that do require that diesel scrappage. And then to date, across Core, $106 million funded 795 individual terminal tractors. That does also include the infrastructure enhancement. So there was an infrastructure enhancement available for terminal tractors. It was $3,000 if the charging was under 50 kilowatts, and it was $30,000 for above 50 kilowatts. So that would be wrapped up in that $106 million of funding. Go ahead, next slide. So outside Core, there are other incentive programs that kind of use different funding sources, have different rules. I don't work on these, but I can get you in touch with people that do if you want to learn more about them. I know they both fund terminal tractors, and I know the New York program funds TRUs. I'm not sure if the Washington one does. But they're WASIP, which is run by WashDOT and the Climate Commitment Act, and then NYTVIP, which despite the name about being a truck voucher incentive program, this last year created what they call a non-road portion, and that has funding for terminal tractors and TRUs. Next slide. And then just some other resources for anyone that's interested. The funding finder on the left shows funding sources available across the United States. You can do a search by state. If you're in California, you can search by zip code, which will even give you local funding sources based on equipment. And then on the right is what we call OZETI, or the Off-Road Zero Emission Technology Inventory. This is a global inventory of available zero emission technologies. It has 5 categories right now, and 2 of them are terminal tractors and TRUs. And these don't have to be eligible in any of the incentive programs. It's just kind of a scale of what there is globally in the market. And so the next slide will come up, but that is all. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Emily. Thank you to all of our presenters. That was a ton of great info. I'm sure a lot of folks maybe didn't even know what these equipment types were starting the webinar. So hopefully folks have learned a lot. We do have quite a few questions, so I'm just going to get right into it. One of the first ones here notes that trucking shore power has been an eligible DERA project for many years, so the Diesel Emission Reduction Act funds that states manage. What do you think the mismatch is between this project type being available yet but not being implemented? Any thoughts on that?
This is Matt. So I think there is somewhat of a mismatch between public and private infrastructure. So again, I kind of go back to if there's no chicken, there's no egg, but you have to order special equipment or a different model of equipment for TRU specifically to be shore power ready. And if fleets are consistently year to year not ordering equipment with shore power, they wouldn't necessarily think of changing that because of an incentive program that, truthfully, when I ask most of the fleets we work with of their knowledge of some of these programs, they don't even know about them, right? Let alone they're like, this is too much paperwork to do. Can somebody else just figure this out for me, right? So very similar to things we hear from EVs and other electrification stories. But yeah, I definitely agree the DERA program has been underutilized. But I think some of these fleets, at least our larger fleets that operate in many different states, see DERA being implemented in 50 different ways. And it's just, again, in a day-to-day operation, where downtime and thinking about things other than getting the cargo delivered is kind of a challenge. Trying to figure out, should I switch TRU models and apply for infrastructure, and how much money is that going to cost? And now I got to get a contractor quote. It's usually just even too much to think about. So,
Thank you, Matt. I have a question here. Mark, I think this came in during your presentation. New York was wondering, do you monitor your site connection dispenser failures remotely, or does a customer have to call if something is wrong? I think you mentioned that you are doing remote monitoring and addressing these before they might even notice, but please, anything else you want to share there?
Yeah, good question. So historically speaking, we did not have that capability. We would get a call from the customer. We would send out one of our service techs to come look at it. We do assign Orange EV employee only. We don't do third-party service, which is an advantage. We have a service member within a couple hours of every customer we've ever had with a service van, fully trained. But with the addition of ChemPower, OptiGrid, these are smart chargers, and we can remotely monitor them. We can diagnose them. We can fix them remotely. So long story short, we used to not be able to do that. We can now.
Wonderful. Thank you. Got another question here. Are there priority corridors that the U.S. should focus on to build out? The question's around shore power for eTRUs, but I think maybe it's safe to say actual charging as well. Any particular corridors come to mind that states should focus on?
yeah, I mean, if I could comment on it, we're definitely seeing like the whole West Coast corridor down to Houston as a developing corridor, right? I think that's pretty clear for everybody. There's truck charging being developed with MCS in those corridors, but the sites being developed, from what I've seen, don't have any truck parking at all. So even the ones that are being set up at the traditional truck stops are going to rely on parking spaces that aren't electrified for TRU power. If we electrify a set of reserved parking spaces at these truck stops in combination with deploying MCS, at least for the trucks that are pulling reefers, even traditional grid hybrid reefers, we can plug them in. That could be a start. And using the equipment, like John was saying, that's flexible and convertible, and it's the socketed bring your own cord approach. Hey, if you bring a grid hybrid, you get a grid hybrid cord from behind the counter at the truck stop, and you put a deposit down on it. If you bring a battery trailer, you go pick up the battery cord and plug it in. And I think that the kind of flexible infrastructure is there now. We just need sponsorship and some policy put in there to add these spaces. So I think that would be one to work on. And then the port drayage locations, Chicago, the East Coast, those are other areas of focus. But I think some of those West Coast and into Texas corridors are where the focus should be.
Thank you. I know we're at time. I've got a few more questions here. Maybe I'll follow up with the panelists offline and we can get some of these responses out to folks. But everything from what if this equipment meets Build America, Buy America requirements, a big topic for states running incentive programs using federal funds. down to kind of permitting and siting issues. So I'll follow up with some of these after. I just want to take a moment to say thank you again to all of our panelists for taking the time to share your expertise with folks on this webinar. I hope that everyone learned something. Thank you to everyone for joining. If you have additional questions, please feel free to reach out to NASEO at any point. Otherwise, we'll share some additional resources in the follow-up email. And thanks again. Hope everyone has a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Jessie.
Thank you.